This conference will now be recorded.
Tonight will be a regularly scheduled meeting of the Town of Darien Zoning Board of Appeals. We will hear applications as they are listed on the agenda for tonight's meeting. We ask that if you are presenting, you unmute your microphone, and please, if you're not presenting, please mute your microphone. We'll have questions from the board, questions from any interested parties who may wish to speak. We'll have time for all of that. We will, at the end of the closed hearings, we will have deliberations. You cannot participate in those deliberations. They're for the board members only. Woody, we are going to have to figure out some way for Dan to participate in the deliberations, because I see his mic is on, but I can't hear anything from him. So we're going to have to work through that when we get to that point in the meeting. If you wish to stay for the deliberations, you're more than welcome. If you decide not to stay, you can contact Woody tomorrow and see what the decision was. Without anything further, we'll start with calendar number 12, 2020, a continuation of a public hearing that was opened on July 15th. And this is for 40 Contentment Island Road. Samuel Fuller is the applicant. If you're here on that application, if you could please come forward.
Hi, Sam Fuller here. I'm not sure if I'm able to turn on video. Oh, here we go. We'll turn on our camera. I'm here with my wife, Oksana. And first, we want to thank everyone for coming tonight. I counted quite a few. It looks like almost 25 people here. So thank you all for paying attention to our application and for your volunteerism with the town. Greatly appreciated. So Oksana and I are recently married and are planning on living in this house, which I've lived in for the last 15 years, planning on living in the house essentially until we're taken out horizontally. So we'd like to improve it. There are a number of things that are functionally obsolete about the house. It was built in 1953 and is really a raised ranch on one side, which I'll point to when we point to the plans, with the lower level of the raised ranch in the elevation 6-ish range, 6 or 7. And the main house is really a single-story ranch house adjacent to that raised ranch structure that's half a story up from the lower level and half a story down from the upper level. And the main part of the house is at elevation 13 and is really quite a sprawling ranch. The house enjoys an absolutely beautiful lot. It's almost like a peninsula. It's surrounded on almost 3 sides, but definitely 2 sides by water, with really nice views of Scotts Cove. And it's a really pleasant place to live and a pleasant place to spend the rest of your life, which is our desire. It is, however, in 2 floodplains, both a velocity zone floodplain, which we will talk about. Also, I'm sorry, I didn't introduce Chris Pagliaro, whom you all know well, our architect, and Danilo Marino, who is, forgive me, Danilo, if I mispronounce your last name, who is works with Chris and has done the lion's share of the heavy lifting on these plans. Forgive me for not introducing you guys earlier. This home, and Danilo will pull up some slides in a second, but the home sits in 2 different floodplains, which we'll point out to on the survey. What we're proposing to do is what we hope will be and plan to be a relatively minor modification, which we think will add a lot of value and functionality and solve a number of the obsolete things of the house, namely the access to and from the lower level, the access to and from the upper level, and the access to and from the main garage all of those have below code head heights, and it's a little awkward getting in and out of the house. The other thing that this will do is allow us to add a master bedroom, which will allow us to use the old master bedroom as an office, which seems to be more in, an in-home office, which seems to be definitely something everybody's using nowadays, and we've used a lot more of. And both Sana and I spend quite a bit of time working at home. So that is the goal. And with that, why don't I point, what I'll do is go through the plans in this really unique design that Chris and Danilo have come up with, and we'll walk you through the plans, and then Chris will talk specifically about the variances we're seeking and why, and what the alternatives are, et cetera. So with that, Danilo, can you pull up on the screen the presentation?
Can you make me the presenter?
Yes, just one moment.
Share my screen. My name is DA. I'm the Danilo Marini.
You should have control. Do you see the dialog box on your computer?
Did you
Yeah,
get
it's
to,
not. It still says to share your screen as the organizer to make you presenter.
you gave it to Danilo?
Yes. Hold on. Do you see it now?
No, it's still saying ask organizer to make you presenter. My name is Danilo Marini, DANILO MARINI.
Fred, for what it's worth, my screen
I
just
see.
showed
Okay.
DA as the.
I'm trying to share it to DA. That's why. I'm trying to share it to DA.
Okay. Yeah, I got
my
it now.
screen is. Yeah, okay. I see it. Yep, there you go.
So can you make that full screen, Danilo? Can everyone see that okay?
If you can make it full screen, that'd be appreciated. Good enough.
So
That better?
I think full screen depends on how you set your own screen up.
oh, okay.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so Danilo, I'll just read down this quickly touch. So as I said before, we're trying to straighten out access from the rest of the house to the garage and to the upper and lower levels. Currently, the garage requires a number of steps up and down. It really puts you in the same place, really just in the process of walking down what would otherwise be a nearly straight hallway. And the doorway is only 5'8", and if you're wearing a baseball cap, it's not unusual to whack your head on the doorway. I'm 6'3", and my wife's son, who lives with us, is 6'4". So, or maybe no, it's 6'2" and 6'3". I'm off by a number. Sorry about that. Men always seem to exaggerate their height up, but anyway. And the other thing we're trying to accomplish is when we do make this change, where this will allow us to have a single level access throughout the house to a bedroom that is downstairs that is currently substandard and tough to furnish and doesn't really work. And this may be the bedroom where either my mother or Oksana's mother moves, and or we move if we ever become wheelchair bound. The other thing this footprint addition does is allow us a place to put a stair that will get up to the second floor, which is planned to be added over just one small section of the house. The reasons for the hardship are that the house was built in 1952. It was prior to any flood zone or setback requirements. We're not intending to impose any of these proposed changes are not going to increase any nonconformity other than new construction. But the new addition is within the setbacks. And all the other changes which we'll go through are actually reducing the volume or the distance in various setbacks. So in no place are we actually making worse nonconformity. The house, up until 2013, the house was conforming. When the new map changed, I think it put it out of conformance. And they also, I think that that velocity zone line moved into the sunroom, which we'll get into a little bit later. The house currently, by FEMA's regulations, the house is required to be, the first finished floor is required to be at elevation 13, and coincidentally, that happens to be the first finished floor elevation at elevation 13. So I got into this a little bit, but why, Danilo, if you can scroll just down a little bit, why this is the minimum change. All work is, or maybe just scroll down, all work is proposed within the outer boundaries of the home. You'll see when we get to the drawings that if you draw a string around the house, the new slab on grade addition proposed is actually within the confines of the perimeter of the home. There's, as I said, no increase in nonconformity. We're actually reducing volumes of some of the nonconformities that currently exist. Work is conforming with the current FEMA regulation of 13. And the way we propose the structure to be, which is a slab on grade, there will be no structure, new structure below elevation 13. So it will be conforming in that way, even if you added concern about structure in the floodplain. And as we said, this work is providing access to the existing home. When we look at the plans, I'll show you that there's currently a terrace where we're proposing to place a slab actually higher than the existing terrace. And very minimal. It's just basically making what is currently outdoor access higher in elevation and this, essentially within the same boundary. So it is very minimal in terms of change. The reason we've outlined that we believe this should be approved is it is a hardship. It is a minimum change, and it's consistent with the FEMA regulations for lateral additions for non-substantial improvements. And Chris will get into that a little bit later. It's also, as I said, we've met hardship, we've met minimum change. We're decreasing volumes of current nonconformities. We're improving the flood proofness. That's a made up word, but we're actually improving many things about the house that are not, are currently not good as it relates to flooding. As part of this addition, we're going to move all of the mechanical systems up into the upper space. Currently, the boiler and our oil tanks are sitting around elevation 6. We actually have a flood-proof door in the crawl space under the house to protect the boiler. And the other thing we're moving, this isn't really necessary as part of this work, but to make it conforming, we've raised the air conditioning condenser platform to make it conforming. And we're also raising the access to the home when you look at the plans, I'll point this out.
Excuse me.
The access home will actually be to elevation 13. Currently, it's somewhere around 10.6. And also some of the other things we're doing to mitigate the major variances we're looking for are to the flood variance, both from elevation 16 and the one from elevation 14. The mitigation we're doing for that is we're reinforcing the part of the home that's in this floodplain in the velocity zone. We're not putting any new structure below the existing floodplain, and we are raising portions of the very low portions of the house to improve access to the home. The other thing, we're actually reducing the exterior perimeter of length of the home that's exposed to the floodwaters. So with that, Danilo, why don't we just keep scrolling down through the presentation slides? If we can go to the next slide, please. Chris will get into this, but this shows the section of the FEMA guidelines, which says that if you're doing a lateral addition, the addition required to be elevated at least to the elevation of the existing lowest floor. It's not required to be raised above that floor in the FEMA guidelines. So that's important. Chris will get into that in more detail after we look through the drawings. This is the survey. Why don't you go to the next drawing that shows the pink, Danilo? So if you look, this shows the perimeter of the home. Essentially, the entire home is one story. There are some drive-under garages on that left funny wing that shows an upper right-hand corner there. But essentially, the home is one. And then the section that's at the bottom of the page of the home, Danilo will point to it, that's a garage, and then to the left of that is the sort of raised ranch section of the house. That rectangle there is the raised ranch section of the house. And what we've shown in these drawings is all the red is where we're planning on either having new construction or change in the existing construction. So that current rectangle that's shown in red here, or pink, is the existing patio. And that sits around elevation 10.6 to 11. That one walks up front steps from a lower driveway level to that patio, and that's our front entryway. And we'll show a picture of that later in the slides. But what we're proposing is to raise that patio. So we're raising an area that's in the existing floodplain by about 1.5 feet to match the elevation of the rest of the home. And that's intended to be concrete slab on grade. So there will be no structure hanging down below that finished floor of elevation 13. And the finish of that floor we propose to be inert materials, like a sandstone type material, tile sandstone type material. So no wood or anything that would be a substrate under the elevation of 13. That's important, and that's a mitigation. And I think that shows that we're doing everything we can to mitigate to the FEMA elevation of 13. So let's go to the next slide. This shows, Danilo will outline with the cursor, just showing that existing patio, the perimeter of the existing patio. That is, there is the front of it, and then the two sides are to the left and right, and the existing front door is right there. That's the existing front door. So the proposal is to pour a slab on grade over that patio, as we said, and put a perimeter wall across the front, which is indented in at the ground floor for a front door and stoop. You can see the existing stair that goes up to that front patio right there, and then down to the driveway just to the right and down there. Those two stairs will be replaced with that curvilinear stair there, and then go up into the front door with 2 steps up to the front door. So again, very minimal change to the footprint of the building, and certainly within the confines of the building will hardly be noticeable. In this drawing, we show the minor raising of the equipment platform to the left. If you didn't grant that variance, we would simply leave the air conditioning equipment at elevation, I think it's at elevation 11 now, or we would leave it there at 11, but by getting the variance, we're raising the equipment up higher. But that equipment already exists in the existing setback. The setback line Danilo will show is that line right there. You can see a major portion of the house sits outside that setback line. So that variance isn't really critical, but it allows us to conform more with flood. So it actually allows us to conform 100% with flood, although it is in the setback line. That's why a variance is required for it. Then Danilo will also point in this drawing to the lower level garage, which is a drive under garage to the right there. In the back, you'll see 2 oil tanks. Those oil tanks are strapped down to that lower garage slab. And our intent is to convert our heating system to propane and remove those oil tanks, which are above ground tanks strapped down to the slab in that garage. Okay. Does anybody have any questions? Well, why don't I go through all the plans, and then we'll go back and ask for questions. This drawing shows, that other drawing was the foundation plan. This drawing shows the shaded area, the cross-hatched area is the actual ground floor elevation. So you'll see a scissor stair to the left that corrects the access to the upper garage, which the garage doesn't show in this drawing because it shows in the last drawing because that garage is actually down a level. There's the garage, but it shows that access way right there. Thanks, Danilo. So that stair that was in the previous plan that we had connects to there, right there. Then the stair also has another rise up to a platform above that, and then another rise up to the second floor, which we'll talk to. And that goes to the stair at that platform goes to the level of the split ranch. And there we solve that head height issue by moving those other 2 steps. You'll see Danilo will point to them right there, forward a little bit. So that solves the head height issue below. And also gives great access to that floor level. And then currently that bedroom, which Danilo is pointing to now, is substandard, and this allows a little area to be added to that bedroom at the same floor elevation of that bedroom, and a closet area, and an existing half bath that's shared by both the bedroom and the rest of the house will be dedicated just to that bedroom, and a new half bath will be added in the foyer to the left there. So the work in that foyer includes the stair, which we show to the left. It includes that slightly enlargement of that bedroom and that closet, which makes that bedroom more functional because it's currently substandard, and the addition of that powder room. And again, that floor will all be inert materials to elevation 13, which matches the elevation of the existing house. And we'll talk about why, to comply with the flood zone, which this portion of the house is in, the Darien regulations would require that platform be brought to elevation 14. And we probably wouldn't do it in that case because you'd have to step down, you'd have to step up 2 more risers from the front door. You'd have to step up 2 more risers of those scissor stairs so you don't solve that access to the lower garage. And you'd have to step down 2 risers back into the house and step down 2 risers back into the bedroom. You'd have 2 risers in the middle of a bedroom. It would be very, very uncomfortable, makes no sense. And we don't believe that FEMA requires it. And again, Chris will address that sort of regulatory side of it. But that's one of the variances we're seeking, is to not raise this cross-hatched area to elevation 14, because if we did, we wouldn't do the project. But that's one of the variances we're talking about. Also, this plan, Danilo, if you scroll the plan down so we can see the sunroom, we have this, I don't know, can you scroll the plan down a little bit, Danilo, or is it, no, it's me. I guess everybody on their screen. Can everybody see that sunroom, that square room with a diagonal line through it? That shaded blue area is a portion of the sunroom that sits in the velocity zone. That velocity line was showed up around 2013 when they revised the maps. Water, to my knowledge, water has never gotten up there. It's bizarre that there even is a velocity zone on this site, because we're in Scotts Cove, which is fully protected. And where we're located in Scotts Cove, we're kind of notched in around. We're fully protected from both the south and the east and the west is only a very small fetch across Scotts Cove. The waves are ripples. That said, it's still a velocity zone line, and we're required by the regulations to conform with the velocity zone. That's another variance we're seeking. That would require that any new addition be to elevation 16, which is the requirement of that zone. And then that portion of the house that is the sunroom has to be built to velocity zone standards, all kinds of structural requirements and all that. And interestingly, we wouldn't even be talking to you about this velocity zone variance if we just simply removed that sunroom. So where we're planning on doing work on the house is completely unaffected by the velocity zone. And it's only because a portion of that sunroom exists today that it triggers the variance requirement for new work outside that velocity zone to conform with a velocity zone. So we think it's a serious hardship. It makes no sense to raise the new elevation of the new construction, the red shaded area, to elevation 16. And that sunroom is a very, very desirable attribute of the house. We spend a lot of time on it. I'm actually looking at it right now. My current office, which is the dining room, looks right at it. And it's a seriously nice room and nice place to hang out and sit. And it's very stable. It is a slab on grade. It's never been subject to flooding, even though it is defined formally as being in the velocity zone. Okay, so I think we can go to the next slide. So the next slide, Woody had asked that we kind of try and show pictographically how this stair works, because it is confusing. I think this axonometric drawing that he did, the 3D section A to the right here, does a pretty good, and you can see where the section line is, it does a pretty good job explaining how this scissor works from the foyer going up to the upper level of the split ranch, and then going up to the new second floor, and then going down to what we call the upper garage, and at the bottom of the drawing, and how we've adjusted the head clearance in this plan by sliding that 2 steps forward to get them out of the headroom of the existing garage, of the existing hallway. So we can go on. This is hard to understand. It doesn't really affect the variance that much. We aren't specifically seeking a variance out of this, but it does show pictographically how this proposed addition solves a bunch of stuff that's kind of wrong with the house. And it does it very creatively. I've got to give Chris and Danilo a ton of credit, because it's very creative. This is the next story up. This is the master bedroom. You can see the half stairs coming up. And this is over the existing 1-story section of the house. All of the work is within the existing setback, so there's no setback variance requirement for any of this work. This work is not why we're here, except that we're adding the slab on the lower level. So theoretically, we could put a beam across at the second floor and just have this level. And I don't think that we would even be required to come before you, because we wouldn't be adding any new foundation at grade. It's that adding the new foundation at grade that's requiring this. That said, there is one little minor thing we're doing, which is reducing the volumes in the existing setbacks. If you go to the upper right-hand corner right there, that's the setback line, that little funny jagged line. Danilo will point to it running across there and all the way up there, and you can see the sides and all that. Right now, there's a current existing roof, which you can kind of see as a line that's outside that setback line. It's just an overhang. And we're planning on flattening that roof and making that a flat roof, and we'd like permission to make that a catwalk. We'd also like to take the roof of the sunroom and flatten it. So reducing the volume in the existing setback and flatten it, and have that be a flat roof balcony, really cool promontory up there. And so what we're asking in those two variances there is to reduce the impact of the current nonconformity. So we hope that that's easy for this zoning board to approve because we're reducing a nonconformity. We're reducing the volume of structure in a nonconforming area. Okay. And then finally, rather than have a vaulted ceiling, we just put a mezzanine level, loft level over to the right there, and we're accessing that with a spiral staircase from that mid landing. You know, it's very little additional cost, and that just gives us a little extra space and some nice views both to the west and to the north. And so rather than have a cathedral ceiling there, which we could do, we're not changing the volume of the outside of the building. But we are getting some more square footage in the house, which, as I said, is only a 2-story house, and it's getting rooms on the view side of the house rather than facing back toward the road. So then we can go on to the next slide. This is the roof plan. It just shows, it looks like a lot of roof, but that's just because the way it blends into the rest of the roof line of the house.
Mr. Fuller, excuse me
Yeah.
for a second. We try and keep the presentations to around 10 minutes. We are concerned with the areas of the variance. So if you've got as of right permitted areas to build, like the roof lines and things like that, we're less concerned about that and more concerned about the variance areas.
Okay, so we're almost done here. So why don't we roll right through it? So this just shows the roof line. Danilo, maybe scroll down a little bit. This shows existing and proposed. Below is proposed, and below is existing, and up above is proposed. No variances shown in this. No variances required or shown in this, other than this the ground floor slab at the front door, which Danilo will point to right there. Why don't you go to the next slide, Danilo? This shows where we're seeking variances on the sunroom. The blue is the existing sunroom pitched roof, and we're seeking to square that off and raise the height of the windows in the sunroom. And so we're actually reducing net reduction in height and volume in the setback area, but that's where we're flattening the roof. So again, we hope this is an easy one because we're reducing the impact in the setbacks. And then we show this little cross section here. Danilo, can you point to it? That shows where the existing roof is in the setback, and we're proposing to flatten that and make it a little walkway. So again, reducing the volume in the setback just to make a little catwalk access from that new master bedroom out over to the flat roof of the sunroof. So again, reduction in impact. We're hoping that's a very easy one to approve. Let's move on. Oh, I'm sorry, Danilo. There's one point to the air conditioning condenser there to the right. I'm sorry, it was in that drawing. Go back, I guess. The air conditioning condenser was in this next one you flipped to. Yeah, right there. This shows where the sunroom is changing in volume. The blue is the existing volume, and then you can see the translucent railing. It's probably a cable railing, but it's smaller and lower than the existing peak roof line. And then to the right is the air conditioning condenser platform being raised. Again, that's just becoming more flood conforming by raising it. Again, we hope that's a very, very easy variance to approve. Danilo, why don't you go on to the next drawing? This shows the other side of the balcony, and all the red is all conforming. So it's the blue is the existing pitched roof of the sunroom, which we're making lower here below this railing. Go on to next slide, please. This shows pictures of the front of the house and the back of the house. The lower left-hand photograph shows the existing front terrace behind that picket fence. And to the left of this railing will be where the new stairs cut into that wall and lead up to the house. Where that picket fence is, you'll see in another drawing. Oh, and then you can see the middle drawing on the lower level is the sunroom with a pitched roof. And that's the pitch that we're going to flatten out and put a railing around it. And then the angled roof to the right of that is where we're going to flatten that out and put the catwalk. So all of that work is below and within and less volume than the existing nonconformity. And then to the right is the air conditioning platform that is proposed to be raised to make it conforming with the Darien flood regulations. Let's go to next slide. This, I actually had surveyed and measured out the different elevations, and that's a picture of Oksana there in the lower right. You can see the different elevations. Our proposed elevation is the lowest tape, which in Spanish says caution. That's at elevation 13. That's the elevation of the existing house. And that wraps all the way around to the front door. And you can see in these other photographs, and the photograph above, the one with Oksana in it. You can then see elevation 14, which you can see it's almost up to Oksana's waist to walk into the house and then step back down. And then you can see elevation 16, that's pretty preposterous. I mean, we'd probably have to get a cherry picker or something to get up into the house. If you look in the upper right-hand photograph, that yellow tape are indications of those elevations. You see the door threshold is at elevation 13. That's the whole main house is at elevation 13. Elevation 14 would require 2 risers up and then 2 risers down to get into the house. And then elevation 16 would require, you know, it's fully 3 feet up, which would require 6 risers. You know, it would be, it wouldn't be feasible or practical. Let's go to the next slide. This just shows, I'm sorry, was that next slide more pictures? So you can kind of get a pictographic feel for where the house is relative to the floodplain, where the sunroom is, and where the addition is going up inside on the other side of the house from the water. There's a sunroom. That's where the addition is going in the back of the house, opposite where the water is. So this just gives you sort of a feel for the lot. Let's go on, please. This is a little bit embarrassing being in the pictures, but this shows the head height problem with the existing stairs, which we're solving. And my dog is looking at me wondering why I'm having the picture taken. And then the red room is our mud room. That door is at 5'8". And those 2 steps down, you see the step from the tile down and then another step down, those would be eliminated. That would go straight through from the mud room to the new stair, which will be just to the right. And because the addition will be to the right there. And then the head height will be solved by sliding the upper level stairs forward past the entryway into the new stair to the right. Okay. And then these are axonometrics of the 3D drawings of the house, the lower level being the existing and the upper drawings being the proposed. And you can see the new front entry patio in the center of the upper left drawing. You can see the new, the proposed reduction in pitch and roof of the sunroom to the right-hand drawing, and the proposed catwalk and everything else. It is only the catwalk railing that is causing the variance, and it's only because the sunroom is within an existing setback that we've got to get permission to reduce the impact of the you know, of the current nonconformity in the setback. Let's go on, Danilo. This is Chris Pagliaro's certification, which we submitted along with the contractor certification and budget to show that this is under 50% of the current constructed value of the home per the tax assessment at market per the tax assessment at market.
Mr. Fuller, we've been through the packet materials, so we're familiar with all of these items that you're showing us.
Okay. I think that's it, and I'll turn it over to Chris or questions. Maybe Chris, why don't you just jump in real quick, and then you're just going to talk to the variances, and then we take questions. And we appreciate
Sure.
you, and sorry for taking more than 10 minutes.
Well, good evening, Christopher Pagliaro, Architects, 320 Post Road, Darien. I think Sam did a very good job explaining the several variances about reduction in height and catwalks and the mechanical information. So I'll speak specifically to what I think is the major conversation here, which has to do with the flood zone. I've been practicing for 33 years and 22 of them extensively within FEMA flood zones, especially in this area. And I don't think there's a more imposing hardship on a property than an owner having a home that was not originally within a VE zone. Because especially when it was made non-conforming by the changing of the flood maps. I suggest this because there's an extreme difference between a standard foundation in an AE zone versus a VE zone. When designing a building from scratch, one can easily plan a VE compliant foundation with the understanding that the lowest level of lowest horizontal structural member must be 12 inches above the VE line. Most importantly, the vertical elements of the flood zone have to be minimal to allow the flow of wave action under the structure. But when you're in an existing home that is put into a VE zone, it essentially requires you to build a completely new foundation, and with that, a new structural system for the house in order to span the limitations of the vertical placement. As an example, consider if we were to raise the house under an existing wood frame bearing wall, now you have to span from vertical column to vertical column. So it's not as if you're just building on top of a foundation that's there. So in my experience, I always find the hardest thing to do is to convert a home into a VE compliant home. 40 Contentment Island is the prime example of that. It was constructed as a compliant home, and a compliant addition was put on this home as recently as 1997, and it was the revisions to the firm map, as Sam referred to, in July of 2013 that created this nonconformity, which subsequently created this hardship. Because this house is unique, as you can see in the drawings and the aerials, most of the perimeter of this house embraces where we're looking to do the addition. There's a lower level that's existing non-conforming. Grade essentially runs up to this house. So if we were to construct an addition where we're proposing it that was compliant with VE, what good would it do? I can't get the free flow of water from the flooding side in even under the VE compliant home, VE compliant addition, because the entire house around it prevents that from happening. So we're on the opposite side of the floodwater with this. So the fact that there's only one wing of the sunroom that triggers this, the remainder of the structure sits comfortably within the much simpler AE zone. And so if we were to ignore the VE requirement, we're really looking at a house that's within the AE 13, which triggers the freeboarding of 14. But if we place that at 14, we'd be increasing the pedestrian approach to the front door, as Sam explained, and that's why we're proposing to do this addition at 13. Understanding that Darien zoning regulations consider this quote unquote new construction, we're being asked to construct the addition 3 feet above the existing floor, and if only considering the AE, we're being asked to do it at 14. In the spirit of the zoning regulations, trying to bring homes into compliance with FEMA, it's FEMA itself that specifically exempts non-substantial improvements from this scenario by stating that the non-substantial improvement lateral addition, which this is, may be considered to the elevation at which the existing home was built to, which is what we're proposing to you tonight. So that's really my summary of to me, the mechanical, the reducing the volume. I'm not trying to minimize your decision on that, but I think they're pretty self-explanatory. But I wanted to explain why I don't think we have a slab on grade. We don't need a freeboard with that. And I think that we're complying with FEMA with this. It's really the way your zoning regulations are asking for this to happen. So I'm here to answer any questions. I wanted to keep that nice and short.
Sure. So a couple of questions. First, a change in the zoning or flood regulations by itself does not create a hardship. So, we struggle with this with applicants all the time. Zoning regulations change, flood regulations have changed dramatically. and it does impose issues for properties like this in trying to find solutions that are practical with an existing structure. So, you know, we can't just say, oh, yep, the zoning regulations changed, we can go ahead and grant the variance. We got to try and find some other reason to grant that variance. And so we start looking at unique nature of the lot. We have some of that in this case. You know, some of the issues I guess I came up with as those sort of listening to the presentation. You know, when we talk about reductions in nonconformities, you know, we talk about substantial reductions in nonconformities. And when I look at, you know, if someone sat down and calculated it, I don't think it would be a significant reduction in nonconformity. It looks like what you've done with the sunroom is you've taken the pitched roof off, but you've raised the flat roof and then put a railing on top of it. So you're getting a very minor improvement of a nonconformity. And when you say you're not doing any work on the sunroom and that's throwing you into the VE zone, well, you are doing work on the sunroom, right? And it's part of this project. So I guess, could you speak to a couple of those items? And I've got a few more that I'd like to go through as well.
So we are planning on changing the windows out in the sunroom, and we'd like to change them with taller windows. Currently, we have a window in the gable of the sunroom, but we'd really like the glazing to move up. So that is the improvement we're making to the sunroom. You know, we could leave the sunroom as is, but we'd like to use it as a deck and make it more usable. And it ends up being a net minor reduction. We don't think you should approve the variance because that, you know, we're not saying that we're doing this work to make it more usable and more functional. We're not doing it to have a reduction in the nonconformity. As it happens, the work we're proposing is a reduction in the nonconformity. That's why we think it makes sense and it's desirable. The alternative is to just leave it as is. And if you don't approve the variance, then we would leave it as is. And so why not get a slight reduction in the nonconformity and make it more usable for the property owner? The town gets a benefit of an improvement in nonconformity, and the homeowner gets a benefit of making it more usable and more desirable.
Sure, I completely understand your position. The problem is a reduction in a nonconformity in this arena that we're in is a basis for granting other variances. And so I'm trying to find a way to, you know, work with you as a homeowner to find a substantial reduction in nonconformity that allows us to grant a variance we might not otherwise grant. And so that's why I was looking at that, and I was really, you know, I was hopeful that there was a substantial reduction there because it makes our job a lot easier. And anytime someone is doing something to make the project better on a substantial basis, that makes our job a lot easier. And then when I looked at the plans, it doesn't look like it's a meaningful reduction. It looks like it's, you know, a very small reduction. I mean, do we have, Chris, do you have any calculation of what that value is of the reduction in nonconformity?
I believe Danilo has that information. Did we put it on the narrative?
Mike, I thought I saw 65 square feet in the narrative, if you will. I may be wrong on that, but I thought it was.
It's correct. It's 63 cubic feet. Oh, I apologize. No, the 63 cubic feet is the deck, the catwalk off the master bedroom, and we are reducing 277 cubic feet of the sunroom. Did I come through? Did people hear me? I guess it didn't have much impact.
I heard.
Okay.
Yeah, I heard you.
Okay.
Sorry, I heard you. I was on mute. Okay.
So the other thing that I could say is that in the process of replacing the windows, we do plan on improving the structure and the strength of the structure. That said, I think we could, I don't want to get in trouble here, but I think we could replace the windows as part of the maintenance of the house without a variance, and just leave the pitched roof. So we'd like to flatten the roof, which has the added benefit of reducing the variance. I know I'm kind of repeating myself, so my apologies for that, but if you don't grant the variance, then we would just leave it as is, and then the town ends up with the same nonconformity rather than a slight improvement in the nonconformity. Our option here isn't to not do the sun. Our option isn't to not have the sunroom. Our option is to not have a flat roof on the sunroom. The sunroom will always be there, regardless of whether or not the variance is granted.
Yeah, I think we're missing each other on this one. I'm trying to solve a bigger issue with this application, which is how can we grant a variance for an area that's not flood compliant in a fairly substantial project on this house. And so one of the ways we can get there is a substantial reduction of nonconformity.
I understand. Okay, I get it. And my apologies for not getting that at first. So
this is not an easy. Unfortunately, our job has gotten very difficult over the last few years. Some case laws come out and some guidance from FEMA's come out and basically said we shouldn't grant any of these. I mean, basically, the case law says that changing flood maps and flood zones is not a basis for a hardship. And by the way, they're not a reason to grant a variance, and you shouldn't grant a variance because we want those people to bring these things into conformity. And so that's sort of the basis that we start with, and then we try and figure out how we can work with the community to try and get projects completed. So that's why that's what I'm circling around there. I'm not trying to be difficult. I'm not trying to be obtuse. I understand.
May I ask a question? May I ask a question along those lines? And I don't mean to sound as if I'm challenging that. I'm legitimately curious as to when you say not to grant variances, notwithstanding the sunroom conversation, but the proposed first floor addition to the home, is it a variance from your zoning regulations or is it a variance from FEMA that they're having that conversation with you? Because my position on the entry is that I don't need a variance from the flood zone and FEMA's requirements. From FEMA, I need it from Darien.
So there's some case law, and Woody, I can't remember the case. Where was it? It was down in was it in Guilford?
I think it was Branford, actually.
And basically they said the court ruling was basically that any of these types of variants, whether it's FEMA or town regulations, really shouldn't be granted if they expand the use of the property and expand the use in the flood zone. And that's sort of what we're dealing with here. That's why I'm trying to figure out a creative way to work with you guys and come up with a solution that doesn't put us in a bind.
Well, I think that, and I get it now, and I guess I thought you were specifically talking about the sunroom variance for the sunroom volume reduction. We can produce for you right now a list of things that are improving, and this is what I used in my narrative, the flood proofness of the house, improving our conformity with the flood proofness, which I've stated and before, but I can expand on them. One is for the sunroom specifically, improving the sunroom will improve the structure of it, so that will make it more resilient. Two, we are adding flood vents that currently don't exist on the lower level of the house in areas that are in the floodplain, the lower garages and the lower level of the house, which is the left side where there's the raised ranch section of the house. That rectangle to the left is all below floodplain. That whole area is in the 7s and 8s in elevation. Three, we are eliminating the oil tanks and the boiler and the hot water heater and the ducts that are on that lower level. Then 4, so those are pretty substantial, but we don't have that now. If we weren't here for a variance, then we wouldn't be doing that stuff. 4, the condensers that are on that platform are currently, that platform is currently below flood elevation, and we're bringing that up to conform with the flood regulations, fully conform. It's only, the only reason a variance is required is because that work happens to be in a setback. But it's an existing nonconformity regarding setbacks. But we will make it fully conforming regarding flood. And then 5 is this whole front patio is currently at elevation 10.6, and that's part of the access to the house. We are raising that to elevation 13, which is the FEMA flood height, with no structure below 13. It's a slab on grade. So from a FEMA standpoint, we're improving the entire access to the front of the house, which is currently a patio, an impervious patio at 10.6, that we're making a slab on grade at 13. So that's a list of, and then with, you know, the volume reductions for the sunroom within setbacks and within floodplains, and the structure improvement within floodplains, and also the volume reduction for the catwalk in the setback, which happens to be, it's not in the velocity zone, but happens to be in the AE zone. So that's a pretty good list of stuff: flood vents, oil tanks, boiler, air conditioning condensers, building access, volumes within setbacks, structure within the velocity zone. That's 8 things, and I'm hoping that's enough. And oh, by the way, the most important one is this is a non-substantial addition, which FEMA provides for lateral additions, non-substantial, to be both at the same elevation as the main structure of the house.
Okay. I hope it's enough as well. I'd like to see you get an approval and try and work towards that. So I have a couple other questions. Some of these are for staff. Woody, you had some notes about the septic system. Is there an issue with the septic, or Dave Knopf wrote a letter about the septic system?
We had some comments from the health director. And I did, I think, include some things and possible stipulations for your consideration. And you can go through those one at a time if you wish.
Okay. I didn't see.
So maybe I could interject a little bit to add to this, with your permission, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, please.
The current septic system is fully functional and conforming, has been inspected. When I bought the house in 1997, or I'm sorry, in 2006, I had a new septic system for a 6-bedroom home engineered and approved by the town health department. I submitted that plan and that approval to Woody and to the zoning board of appeals. That plan, because we didn't actually build that septic system, that plan, that approval has expired, and the regulations have changed a little, not a lot. I have consulted with Vesta Engineering that did that septic system and has done a lot of other septic systems in the area recently and in the past. And he said that he sure will be conforming. You know, we had great perk before, and he has to show the MLSS and all the stuff he has to show. So I'm quite confident that a new septic system permit would be issued with the same design substantially as proposed. We're not proposing any work where the existing septic system is, and we would not be required to replace the septic system because the existing septic system is functional. And we just have to show that the new septic system could be built should the existing septic system not function.
Okay, and Woody, that would be part of a standard application for a building permit anyways, wouldn't it?
Yes, for a construction permit, yes.
Okay. There was some questions about DEP comment. Did we ever get anything back from DEP?
Not anything further. This goes back a few months when the extent of the work was questioned, I guess is fair to say. There has been some information submitted. And I guess another one of the possible stipulations would be that if you find the project acceptable, to require that the building official and the zoning enforcement officer confirm that we're not going above the 50% rule of the value. Okay.
Yeah, and that was going to be my next question, the cost. There's some notes on some of the spreadsheets that were circulated. I didn't quite follow them. Can you walk me through that? Woody?
Oh, I'm sorry, can I?
Yeah, one of them was missing page 2. And then the next one said it was a different info in total. So what is the final, do we know what the final one is?
I'm not sure. That's why I think it's possible that we just have a stipulation to clean that up.
Okay.
So
We had a cost that changed with flood vents being added, just to be clear with that. And I had submitted the email to Woody, and for some reason it came across missing page 2, which I resubmitted twice. But the total, and this is a contract value from Fletcher Development of $475, $473. I was asked to vet it for its entirety and its completion, which I did. So you do have all 3 pages, and the total that we're looking at is $475, $473.
And just to be clear, who is speaking?
Oh, I'm sorry, it's Chris Pagliaro again.
Thanks, Chris.
I don't know if it pops up. I'm more used to the Zoom. I apologize.
That's okay. You show up as caller 2.
My face is on, but my computer audio stinks, so I put the headphones in and use my phone.
And then, sorry for the long list of questions. I made notes as I was going, and I just want to try and get through them, and then we'll open up to other questions from the rest of the board. The AC units, can you just confirm that they will be fully compliant, other than the fact that they are with FEMA regulations, et cetera, except for the fact that they are in a non-compliant area because they're over the setback?
that they will, yes. The elevation that's proposed, I think it's elevation 14, or is it 15, Chris? The platform was raised to the FEMA conforming elevation.
And the platform, this is Chris Pagliaro again, the platform was based on working with Hella's Air for the units that will go on it.
Right.
Okay.
I think it's not only conforming with FEMA, but it's conforming with Darien regulations, which I think add a foot to the FEMA regulations.
Correct.
Okay. I'm going to go down the list of board members. I'm going to start with you, Vic, because you're the first one on my list. Any questions on this application? Barb, you're going to be up next.
No, I'm actually pretty good with it, so no questions.
I'm the same. I'm good too.
Jeff?
Frankly, I'd like to see the application a little more buttoned up. Mr. Fuller points out 8 points, no pun intended, 8 different areas where things are improving. I think he did a good job of that, except it was a little fly by night. I'd like to see the whole thing buttoned up a little bit better and tightly wrapped, i.e. the point I just made, i.e. the issue of the septic tank. I appreciate his comment about he's pretty sure that the plans are going to be approved with regard to DEEP's requirements, but do we really know that? I mean, I generally I'm okay with this, but I just don't think it's as tightly wrapped as I would prefer. I'm also a little bit concerned with, go ahead, Mike.
Do you think we could deal with some of those issues though with stipulations?
Yes, I do.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with your point. I think, you know, without vetting each of the I don't want to say quotes, without vetting each of the improvements, you know, I can't make a good calculation, but they do seem to be improvements. I think they're trying to work with a difficult site, and you know, we appreciate that. You know, zoning regs change, flood regs change, and you know, try and work with people to accommodate. So, sorry, Jeff, I cut you off. So if you have
No, I'm good. But you did touch on my other concern, and that is, pardon me, is the, you know, is the hardship as it relates to this site. And, you know, we do struggle at times with respect to, you know, look, yeah, the zoning regs changed, the flood regs changed, and is that the only thing that we're, you know, honing in on in terms of the hardship? I just mentioning that.
Yeah, I think that the applicant presented a few other things, such as the unique nature of the lot, you know, the date of the house when it was built, and then the unique construction techniques that were used. So I think there's stuff that's unique to this property, you know, and then there is there are the improvements that they're making. I think there's a list of 8 or 9, and I think that's helpful. I wonder if the sunroom is a substantial enough, but taken as a package, I think that there's probably enough there. You know, I don't think the sunroom by itself would be a substantial enough improvement.
I agree. And by the way, Mike, I'm caller number 1.
You okay? Yeah, I've got your face on mine. And I recognize your voice. Woody, have we figured out? Can Dan?
Yeah, can you hear me, Mike?
Oh, good. Dan, you're up. If you have any questions.
Sure. No, I think like Jeff, you know, I'm also struggling to determine what's convenience and what's hardship, you know, in this situation. What would help me is to determine, or at least see, where is the hardship caused by the flood zoning requirement, and what are the hardship caused by the non-compliant, you know, plot or the property, which would be subject to the Darien zoning and the variance, you know, guidelines. And that way we can determine, you know, is the hardship truly because of this flood zoning requirements, or is it because of an existing condition? And then you laid out all the provisions and, you know, changes that you are making to make the house more compliant. If you can lay out those conforming or enhancement that you are making to the property against the flooding and against the Darien non-conforming issues, I think it will help at least me understand better what the hardship was and how you're going to rectify it, and the changes that you're making. You know, that will improve the property and also, you know, the local district.
Mr. Fuller or Danilo or Chris, you want to speak to that?
Yes, I do. First, regarding Jeff's comment about the septic system and my saying that I believe a new septic system will be approved. We're not asking for a variance about the septic system, and I think that Woody confirmed this, in order to get a zoning permit, we have to demonstrate that we have proper septic. So I don't think the septic question is even in the ZBA's purview, honestly, frankly. If you guys want to add it as a stipulation, that's fine, because it's redundant with the zoning permit requirements. And so I would, yeah, add it as a stipulation, but it's already in the town zoning regulations. You can't get a building permit without a sign off from the health department and a proper septic system design.
Yeah,
in
no,
reserve.
that's why I confirmed that with Woody, Mr. Fuller.
Yeah. So that one, I don't, I definitely don't think you guys need to worry about, and nor am I worried about you guys worrying about it, because somebody else is already worrying about it, and I know it's a hurdle that we have to overcome. So with regard to outlining, and Jeff, my feelings are a little bit hurt that you think we don't have our act together. I thought we did outline all of the various improvements we're making for the flood proofness that we're doing. And I can outline them again if you like. We can do it slowly, or I could send you an email. But it is those 8 things we talked about: the oil tanks, the boiler. I can go through them again if you like. But I thought we did outline them. But I can do it more cogently and more coherently and more clearly if you guys feel that's necessary.
I don't I don't think it's necessary, because I think it can be addressed with stipulations.
Okay.
Yeah, I think actually Dan's question was really the one that needs to be addressed, and I think what Dan was getting at, and maybe Jeff was as well, is you're telling us that you're improving those, but we're a zoning board of appeals. We don't know what the requirements are for flood vents in a property like this. And so when Jeff is talking about tightening it up, and we don't mean to hurt anyone's feelings, and that's never the intention of this board. But what we're trying to do is understand, what the regulation is, why you're improving, how is that is it a substandard size flood vent that's there now? Is there no flood vent there now? Are the new vents conforming completely? Are they just better than what was there? So it's a little bit more of, not that it's a poorly put together presentation, it's that some of the detail that we would normally get when someone says we're reducing a nonconformity, you would get, we're reducing it because we're putting in flood vents that are fully conforming, and we're going to comply with this regulation, that regulation. And
right.
So that's really, I think, what Jeff was looking for.
Okay, well, so let me be very clear.
I could speak to the flood vents. It's Chris Pagliaro again. Firstly, technically, flood vents they're not the sole satisfier of the issue, because in order to bring the house into conformance, we'd have to recreate the foundation and put it into a VE. VE aside, if we're just addressing flood, we have, I believe it's on the screen on page A100, we're actually proposing to put flood vents in that meet the prescribed requirement for the amount of vents, the location of vents, and the total area of the vents to vent the foundation. It's interesting because a lot of the water side of this house the first floor is almost at grade, and the purpose of a vent is to stabilize the static pressure on one side of a wall should one side have a flood and the other not. Here we have the earth, but if it comes to moving water through, in this case, especially toward Contempt Island Road, we're meeting the foundation flood vent requirements by what we're putting in. The second thing, which we've spoken to several times, is the platform for mechanical, which we are raising to bring into FEMA compliance. We're moving some mechanical equipment from the basement above flood in order to do this. Part of that solution, I think one of the questions I would ask on a commission, and I'm on my own commission in my own town, would be, can't you do this without the need for the addition? In this case, no, because we don't have the room in the house to put these things in. And even though the oil tanks are legally down there and strapped down, removing them is beneficial and something that FEMA looks for. I also think that one of the things, and I don't know if I'm reaching for a hardship, so I'm not going to use that term, but we have some building code issues here. We have a safety issue at a stair. We have a safety issue with the door height. And in order to mitigate that, this addition is fixing some building code issues that are not little petty building code issues, but they're real safety issues.
So Danilo, can you go to the picture of the front foyer with Oksana and the elevations? Because first, so by the way, the short answer, Mr. Chairman, regarding our conformance with flood fences, yes, they will be 100% conforming as required for the house at this elevation. And that's the clarification Chris was making, because if they were 100% conforming, you would have the house at elevation 16 up on stilts with, velocity zone structural design. But if you look at this lower picture, this is the requirement. That's the elevation requirement, 16. Look at how that compares to my front door. Then go to the upper right-hand picture and see the front door. That's the elevation requirement if we add an addition in this little notch of the house. That to me looks like a hardship. I certainly think it's a hardship. It's preposterous. I mean, you couldn't do it, and you can't solve the other problems in this house. The other hardship are all the head heights, as Chris talked about, and the other hardship is that the house is existing condition in a velocity zone, and we're planning on improving that. And this whole stair issue is the hardship. So the other thing, of the 8 things we talked about, if that's not enough, I mean, we can probably list some more. In general, I think that's a pretty good list, and I hope that is convincing to the ZBA.
Okay, good. Any other questions from the board? I can't see everybody, so if you could just chime in.
No.
No,
No,
no, Mike.
No,
Woody, anything from
Mr.
you?
Chairman, I know what I was wanting to say. I was forgetting in my last sentence. Could I add one more little minor tidbit?
Sure.
Danilo, can you go to the survey with the pink rectangle in it? If you look right now, and this is the other improvement, vast improvement. If you look at that rectangle, we're taking the 2 ends off the rectangle of exposed surface to floodwaters. So that dimension across there is 20 feet, and the dimension deep is 17 feet, roughly, order of magnitude. So we're taking those 2 17-foot dimensions that are exposed to floodwater away. Those are being eliminated, and the house is being protected by that slab on grade. And we've reduced the perimeter of the house exposed to floodwaters by 34 feet. And that was on our list of things. And I didn't list that when I listed the 8 improvements.
Duly noted.
Yeah.
Woody, anything further from you?
No, I just wanted to just make sure you're fully aware of the possible conditions and see if that's helpful.
Whether we as the board or whether the applicant?
Well, the board.
Sure, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to note that we have that list in the staff questions report for your use and consideration as you get into deliberation.
Noted. Okay, seeing nothing further from the applicant or the board, is there anyone from the public that wishes to be heard on this application? I'm going to take that as a no. I just scroll through all the. Okay. Oh, there's Dan. Dan, you showed up. All right. Sorry, with nothing further, we'll go ahead and close this application. Thank you very much all for your time.
Thank you for your time.
Next on our agenda is 13/2020. Christopher and Christine Barkley at 5 North Road. If you are here on that application, if you could please come forward.
Yep, I'm here. Chris Barkley's here. Can you hear me?
Hi, Dennis Peters is here as well.
The floor is yours, guys.
Go ahead, Dennis. Thank you.
It's Dennis Peters. Can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Dennis Peters. I'm here at this virtual meeting on behalf of Mr. and Mrs. Barkley to present the request for their variance for their home at 5 North Road. The Barkley's property sits on just shy of an acre in the R1 zone on the north side of North Road. The purpose for our application, I'll be brief, is we're requesting a variance for the construction of a shed dormer along the front facade of the home. Due to the proximity of the house to the front property line, as shown on the map prepared by Arkema surveyors, a portion of the existing home falls within the front setback. And as shown on the screen and before you, I've attempted to shade the areas of discussion. The purple area is obviously the existing home. The light green area is the area between the front property line and the house, that is the front setback. The darker blue is the portion of the home that falls within the setback. And the small triangular piece that's shaded in orange is the portion of the dormer that requires the variance request. So moving forward, a small portion of that dormer falls within the setback, and that requires, or necessitates our request to the commission.
Dennis, are we supposed to be looking at a map?
I'm sorry, I didn't press share on. My apologies.
That's okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah.
So again, I'll reiterate, the purple portion is the existing home. The darker blue area is the existing portion of the home that falls within the setback, which is the non-conforming portion. And again, that small triangular area that's shaded in orange is the portion of the proposed dormer that is in fact non-conforming. And the two pink areas are the existing doghouse dormers that are on the front of the building. A couple of points that I should make is actually we have two requests to the commission. One is proximity and location of the dormer, and the other one involves the height. And if any of the commission members have been to the site, I think they'll agree that there is a significant, drop off in the rear of the house. So per the town's regulations that define the building height, obviously we had to take the spot shots around the structure, and the average grade is such that this dormer that we're proposing indeed falls above the height allowance. And again, this is obviously due to the pretty significant grade drop in the rear of the home, which obviously affects the average grade. So it's an interesting dilemma, if you will, but obviously, we needed to include that as part of our variance request. I should note that in our efforts to design this dormer, we stayed within the confines of the height of the existing doghouse dormers, both in the eave and the facade, if you will, to help soften the the dynamics and the aesthetics of our proposal. So obviously the existing dormers, would generally fall within the non-conformity as far as height is concerned, but it is an interesting, as I expressed in my narrative, it's an interesting dynamic in that, when one thinks of doghouse dormers, if you will, they're generally considered or shown on a typical two-story colonial up in the attic portion of the home. This is an interesting facade in that it's essentially almost a story and a half home with a significant shed dormer on both the front and the rear, which creates the second floor volume for the majority of the second floor. Then these existing dormers and the proposed one is in fact stacked on top of that shed dormer. So it's almost a softening, if you will, of the aesthetics of what a typical dormer condition would be. So I think that's pretty important to note. So it's not this towering two-story colonial that we're proposing a shed dormer on. It's more of a subtle existing roof line. So again, going back to the grading situation, if it wasn't for that steep drop off in the rear of the home, I don't think, and I think the commission members would agree that the height portion of it would not even be included in our application. That said, those are the existing grades, so it is what it is. And again, as far as the location of the dormer, the majority of this is centered around an existing bathroom that's up in the third floor of the home that has very limited headroom, as shown on. I'm sorry, let me just roll this down. So in the existing conditions, I'm sorry, I'm more used to a Zoom than this. Sorry, I'll back up. So the photographs that are here are the existing conditions. You can see there's very limited headroom above this existing tub. There's a very odd and cumbersome floor plan, if you will, of the existing bathroom. So it creates a very unsafe dynamic within that area. So this portion of the bathroom would stay, but the configuration of the bathroom would change such that it allows for a reconfiguration of the third floor plan to incorporate this shed dormer. So the green shaded area that you see here would be the new bathroom layout, which would help the headroom or situation that is confining would now not be within the bathroom space itself. So again, the aesthetics of this shed dormer proposed in between the two doghouse dormers essentially gives us the ability to reconfigure that floor plan to give us what we're looking for to eliminate that kind of unsafe condition. So again, in summary, I'll try to be brief. That's essentially our proposal and our request to the commission, and I can certainly answer any questions as needed.
Is the new dormer any higher than the existing dormers?
No, and that was obviously on purpose to help blend it into the facade, as well as minimize our request to the commission. There was other considerations when we first started looking at the dynamics of this, but in an effort to minimize our request to the commission, we did our best to kind of step the thing a little bit back, if you will, and line it up with the existing dimensions and the existing height. So let me scroll back, I'm sorry, back to existing. So again, based on what I described before, you can kind of see here the traditional quote unquote doghouse dormers that you would essentially see on a normal two-story colonial are kind of softened up aesthetically by the fact that they're kind of stacked on top of this existing shed dormer. So it's kind of a unique and interesting roof line, but it does obviously based on the definition of height in the town of Darien. And again, the height variance, the height definition is definitely impacted by that pretty significant drop off to the rear.
Yes, you've got the unique nature of the lot with the drop off, and that's what gets you into your height variance request.
Correct, and obviously the location of it. And it is interesting too. And I'm not trying to cast any stones by any means. When we first looked at this, and if everybody had looked at the previous months or 2 months ago, because you weren't here in August, the previous meeting we had to withdraw because it was an interesting dynamic. And again, I'm not throwing stones, but the surveyor's plan demonstrated that the house actually did conform to building height, but the way it was delineated or expressed on the survey prior to this application, the garage portion of the home is what the survey was really delineating as far as building height. So when we first looked at it, and I'll take the blame for not exploring it further, but when I saw the survey and the survey expressed the building height, I took that to mean that it was the entire structure. But it was really only done for the addition that was done, not too many years back. So it was a kind of a unique condition. But once the addition was built, now the whole house has to be defined from a building height standpoint. So that's why the rear of the property and the entire perimeter came into play as far as defined building height. So here we are.
All right, Mr. Peters, if I may time out just for a moment. This is Jeff Williams.
Yes.
First of all, I'm having a very, very difficult time hearing you. You're cutting in and out, in and out. I don't know if I'm the only one that's happening to, but I'm having a really hard time hearing you.
I'm sorry about that.
But that's okay. I think, are you on the phone and on audio with respect to this meeting?
No, I'm not. I'm just on my computer.
Okay, understood. If I'm the only one having that problem, I apologize. Just let me ask, because again, I can't hear too well. Pardon me. The chair asked if this new dormer was going to be any higher than the existing dormers. Your response, I believe, was no.
The eave line, yes, the eave line will match the existing doghouse dormers, correct?
So there's not going to be anything put on this house that is higher than what's existing.
That is correct.
Yeah, this is Chris Barkley. If you can't hear him, can you hear me?
I got you.
Okay.
Yep.
Yeah, it is not going to be any higher than what you're existing looking at right there. All it's going to do is fill the gap between those two dormers there.
All right, then I'm missing something here. Why? Because I can't hear half his presentation. Why do we need a variance for this quote unquote third dormer if we have two at the existing height? Why?
Because the existing dormers are non-conforming, both in location and height by definition of the town of Darien.
Jeff?
How'd you get them in? Yes.
So the existing dormers are from a pre-existing non-conforming structure, and they're just filling in the middle in between them. And I think what I was started to get to is they're also burdened with that private road issue where you've got to take 60 feet from the center line of the road.
Right.
So they've got a couple of unique hardships on this. They've got the private right of way. They've got the topography of the lot. The topography of the lots, why they have to get a height variance, and the proximity to the right of way. It's that little orange triangle on your screen is what they're asking for a volume variance for. I think it's a pretty de minimis application.
Yeah, I'm fine. I just wanted to be clear because I apologize. I could only hear half of what he was saying. Just want to be clear on exactly what we were looking at. I got it. I get it. I'm good.
Okay. I apologize if it's my end.
No worries.
You're coming through fine for me, so I'm happy to translate. Anybody?
Thank you.
Who do we have on here? We've got. Let's start with Vic again.
No questions on this end. Very clear.
Barb.
No questions, very clear.
We all heard from Jeff. Dan?
No question from my side.
Okay, Woody? Mr. Woodside?
No questions from me either.
All right. Anything further from the applicant?
No, just we appreciate your time, and hopefully we
appreciate you coming to present in this new strange format. With that, I will ask if there's any comment from the public on this application.
Mike, this is Vic. I do have a question for Woody. Woody, and I'm a little unclear on the regulation on this, on the third floor of a house. Does the 50% rule apply kind of in this case too?
I believe it would. We'd have to look at the construction permit circumstances and basically quantify the second floor living space square footage compared to the attic. So that can be looked at further. But I don't believe it's in there.
Okay. That was my
question. And Vic, if it's non-conforming, they can't get a building permit because they didn't ask for a variance for that.
Okay.
Thank you.
And if I could just jump in, I've done some rough calculations, and based on those, the numbers work out to about 35% of the floor below it, so we're well within the 50% allowable.
Right.
Good. Okay. With that, we'll go ahead and close the hearing.
Great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next up is 14-2020. This is, I'm reading off the wrong thing, Peter Daniel, hopefully I pronounced that right, 40 Hancock Lane.
Right. Hi, Michael.
Installation of a heating oil tank.
I'm here.
What?
I'm here. Okay, can you guys all hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Great. I'm representing myself solo tonight. So if it would be helpful for Fred to help me with just the slide deck, this won't take very long. Or you can just work off the handout that you guys all have. So whatever would be best for you.
If you're gonna need me to pull up your slide deck, I just need a second to pull it down.
That'd be great. Thanks. And I don't know, hopefully I can pull us off. everything's pretty much self-explanatory. So while you're pulling that up, why don't I just go through my case? I've got an 18-year-old 500-gallon oil tank underground in close proximity to my well water. I'd like to remove the tank to an above ground location for environmental reasons, and obviously replace it with a safer, more code compliant tank. And before I sought this variance, I was working with Dave Keating to determine a possible location for my tank that would not require a variance. And the two potential locations that we determined were around the side of the house, and we'd have to look at the survey map on this. I think Woody's got it. I don't know if you have a copy of the photo of the couple of locations, but basically it's around the corner of the house, and it would be 80 to 100 feet from the egress point to where my mechanical room is. And this house was built in 1932. My 35-foot setback line goes through my kitchen, and I've got one access point for my mechanical room on the front of the house, which is where I'm looking to put the fuel tank, which is where the existing underground tank is. That's the only way to get well water and fuel into the mechanical room. And so when we talked about the trenching required and the distance to get it from a conforming spot to that mechanical room egress, I called the fire marshal because I was concerned about having an oil line running that long to the mechanical room. And he basically opined that he had issues with that. And David now in the health department has issues with the fact that the well is about 10 feet from the existing underground tank. So my two issues are my existing lot line and the egress to my mechanical room, which is, you know, so there, here we have some pictures. So those are kind of the two issues that I'm facing with this tank. So Fred, can you control that? Maybe we should go to the survey map. There we go. So just to get you oriented, this is my eastern lot line. Does that cursor work?
Yes, it does.
Yeah, so that's the eastern lot line. This is my driveway. Here's Hancock Lane. So my existing underground oil tank is right here. And my existing mechanical room access point is
No,
right
we
here.
cannot see, I'm sorry, we cannot see your cursor.
Oh, you can't? Sorry about that. Fred, can you run that by any chance?
I can.
I can see your hand right there. Yeah, so just drop it down. This is, yeah, so that's your hand right, bring it down another ½ inch. Yeah, right there is, that's where the proposed tank would go. It's gonna be above ground, above the underground tank. That's my mechanical room access right there. And so if you go up with your hand, take a left-hand turn around that corner, right over there on that corner of the house, right there. Those are the areas that Dave Keating just, you know, said that it would conform in those two little spots there. So the issue is I need to trench, depending on what corner of the house that's on, either 100 to 80 feet. I had it measured, I had it estimated 18 inches below grade. And that's where Bob Buck's got an issue with the length of the run uphill, just worried about an underground oil line, potential freezing or whatever.
Yeah, that's also in an upland review area. So we're putting a contaminant in a protected area. That doesn't seem like a good idea.
No, yeah, no. So that the point of my issue is, you know, I've got this setback line. I'm looking for a 28-foot variance in lieu of the 35 right there. And then it's the egress to my mechanical room. And if we want to scroll through the pictures, I can just run you through the pictures and you can just see
That's okay. One other question. Can you just give me a sense of where the well is?
The well is, if Fred could just run his hand, see that AC unit right there?
Yep.
On the front? I don't know. Yeah, it's right in that area there.
Okay, and it's safe to even have an above ground that close to your well?
It would be, yeah, I'd move it right on the corner there. You can see the, Fred can move his cursor up a little bit. That's right, that line right there. You can see the proposed oil tank
Yeah, yeah.
would be in the corner of the house there. Basically,
Okay.
basically it's above where the existing underground 500-gallon tank is. I just want to pull it above the surface so
Sure.
it's not underground.
Okay.
So
It makes sense to me. I don't, does anyone have any questions on the application?
No.
If
One
anybody wants to see the
question.
pictures, I mean, there's no visual impact if we want to just scroll. You got the pictures there. So there's 10 photos. You can look at them at your convenience. You can see the front of the house. You can see my eastern property line is all woods. My neighbor Alex Sukov has 4.5 acres up there, and the area in front of my house has wetlands, as you can see that stream. So I'm not sure much is going to be happening there with those woods. It's not subdividable. So my whole eastern property line is basically wooded. So there's no visual impact in terms of the tank. I've got pictures in the packet. You can see where it's going to go. It would be behind that big green bush and appropriately screened. You can see the egress to my mechanical room on picture number 7. It's basically a sub-basement window. And then you can see pictures in the mechanical room, photo 8, and then photo 9 towards the end. You can see my well water pipe runs through that slab foundation. So everything has to come into this house via that sub-basement window well.
Vic, did you have something?
I did. Do you have a basement in the house?
It's just a mechanical room, and
I see.
it's on picture. I don't know if you can scroll up on the pictures.
I did see it, actually.
Yeah, there's the front of the house. If you want to just scroll up, we can look at them.
I did see it when I reviewed the materials. Okay.
Yeah,
So
that's all it says. So the tank would go behind that bush to the right of those kitchen windows.
Right.
It'll be a 275-gallon tank, be a vertical tank on poured concrete slab. And I've got the specs for the tank, you know, in my presentation there. It was earlier, and it's
Yep, it's good. We're good. I get it.
double line. So that's the property line right there. Eastern line. That's the other view. That's opposite the tank right there, woods. Then there's another shot scrolling up to the right, just the property line going towards Oxbridge Lane. That's the access to the mechanical room. So that's the well water. That's the fuel line in there. That's the access. That's the only way to get into the mechanical room. That's the mechanical room. This is 1932 stuff. That's my well pipe on the right-hand side with that pressure gauge coming in. So the well is right out in front there. And so this is the picture. You can see those 2 X's. So those were 2 potential areas that are, you know, away from the setback line. But to your point, there's a stream right in front there, and my septic pipe runs around that corner. And the field is out in the side yard there. You know, David and Bob have, you know, they'd like the tank above ground, and it's in the current location.
Okay. Vic,
So
Barb, Dan, anything further?
I have an obnoxious question. Is there gas anywhere near the street? Did you consider converting?
No, it's North Darien. There's no gas anywhere.
All right, propane.
You can put a propane tank in.
Yeah, there's
Dan,
No, I
any
think it's
questions?
fine.
No questions from me, Mike.
Jeff, any questions?
Thanks, Fred, for helping out there. And there was a variance, you know, back in 1986, given the Cizics. I've included that in the package just to indicate that, you know, he rebuilt the, and I knew John Cizic, he rebuilt the garage, which was existing, but, you know, that was 1 foot in lieu of 35. And the town gave him a variance to rebuild the existing garage. So there's a history of them, you know, looking at least at his hardship with the setback and granted him the variance for redoing the garage, existing garage.
Okay.
I'm sorry, sir. I was on mute there for a second, and I wanted to respond to the chair. Vic, with respect to my question, just one quick question. Vic, you asked about what turns out to be the mechanical room / basement. Were you going to? Were you moving towards asking why this tank isn't going in that mechanical room?
No, I was thinking if he had a full basement, it might be a place for the tank in the basement, but doesn't look like he's got a full basement.
Understood. Okay, I'm good.
The mechanical room, it's jammed with everything.
It's pretty crowded down
Yep.
there. I don't
Yeah.
idea.
Yep.
Okay.
I got that. I got that.
Woody, anything from you?
No, nothing further beyond on the staff questions thing.
Yep, we got your notes. I didn't see. I think I got all of them. Yeah. So, 14 tank removal. I think that's right. Okay. All right. Nothing more from the board. Anything further from the applicant?
Oh, I'm good. Thank you very much for hearing my case.
Not a problem. And anything from the public? Is there anyone that wants to be heard on this application? I see no one. So we'll go ahead and close the application. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
We are now moving along to application 15-2020, the application of 7-Eleven for 306 Boston Post Road. If you're here on that application, please come forward.
Sure. My name is Amy Suchins. I'm an attorney at Hurwitz, Sagarin, Slossberg & Nuff with offices in Milford, Connecticut, here representing 7-Eleven. There are a number of people on our team who are on the call in the interest of time and efficiency, and given the legal issues involved, I'm going to do our affirmative presentation, but we do have our project engineer, Jim Bernardino, our traffic consultant, Jason Adams, project management, Mark Donahoe, and 7-Eleven representatives, Dorothy Fleischman, all on the call in the event that there are specific questions that you have once I finish our presentation. So with that,
Amy, can I ask you one just basic level question?
Sure.
When I saw this application, it was the first thing that came to my mind. I don't know if you're aware of this or not, but the town of Darien just amended our sign regulations.
Yes.
And they amended those to make a case for what they felt was appropriate accommodations to businesses coming into this town.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
It's a pretty high bar to get over to
And
get us to grant the variance. I just want to hear your.
No, and we certainly understand that, I think, and if you look at Woody's questions, that's one of the things that he raised in his memo, and I will tell you that we have been working with the planning and zoning staff since fairly early on in the spring because of the sort of how substantive and expansive this application or this project is with respect to the land use boards in the town. And one of the things that we talked about with Jeremy Ginsburg in particular was the signage and, a discussion about the fact that the regulations had recently been amended, just about 2 years ago, as I understand it. Concerns about that we had, given the location on Boston Post Road and the nature of the use, that those regulations really weren't sufficient for this type of facility, and particularly given the constraints of the property. And his recommendation was that we proceed with the variance request because having looked at the town's regulations more comprehensively, he did not think that the Planning and Zoning Commission in particular would be interested in revisiting the entire set of regulations with respect to automotive uses, motor vehicle service uses, much like they will be in the context of the use itself. And so the recommendation that we had was not to proceed on that path. We understand that, we have a high bar to meet. I think we have some constraints on this property that are different from other gas stations in town, and I'd like the opportunity to present that to you. I understand you may ultimately disagree with me, but I do think that we have, we can meet the current hardship standard.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so just by way of background, you do technically have the two applications in front of you. I'm just going to go into my screen and the PowerPoint presentation that we had prepared just to walk you through where we are. And as I said, this is, I just want to give you a little bit of background because this is the first location approval that this board, or frankly anybody in Darien, has had to review in nearly 30 years. There's not been a new gas station constructed. It's our understanding since approximately 1993 or so, when there was a station that was demolished and rebuilt, but this is the first new station much longer than that. So the location approval element that you have is a bit broader than your typical variance capacity. So just by way of background, for the purposes of that part of the application, and to orient you to the site overall, I think everybody's probably familiar with the Duchess property, but just to orient you, the existing building right now where the Duchess is located is sort of right here where the parking in the front of the building is. That will be demolished. Site is located obviously on the Boston Post Road. The exit 13 entrance ramp is shown on the western side of the property. There is, and I think it becomes relevant for the variance portion of the presentation, a highway non-access line here along the western boundary that is a state of Connecticut prohibition of any kind of access or crossing that line. And then the property line along Boston Post Road in the area that I'm just highlighting with the cursor is the taking line from when the highway came in back in the, based on the deeds and stuff back in the 50s, and the property had come out sort of more consistently with the rest of the property line, but there was a taking done. So we have our property line actually goes at this angle because of the highway taking and the proximity to 95. The property is just over an acre, the zoning chart's there, and is located in the service business zone, which is one of your automobile-oriented districts. And we have, as I mentioned earlier, the full gamut of land use applications. There are wetlands directly off the property right here along the highway non-access line. There's a stream and wetlands that was approved back last month in August. We were at the Architectural Review Board last night. We had comments on the design of the building, and also they were interested in your outcome as to whether or not we'd be getting a variance on the signage before they gave us more extensive comments on that. And then we start our planning and zoning hearing next week. That includes a fairly substantial update to the motor vehicle service regulations for the entire town, special permit and site plan for the property. And then with respect to the location criteria, you in this application are sitting as an agent of the state of Connecticut, not in your local zoning capacity as a zoning board of appeals. There was an appellate court decision last year that involved Connecticut General Statutes 1455, which is actually the repairer statute, but the gasoline statute in 14321 was also determined to contain similar language. Both of those suitability criteria statutes were allegedly repealed a number of years ago, but they've never presented either by the legislature or in the courts what you should be looking at in the context of the location approval. So in the applications where these have been presented, most ZBAs still look at those criteria with respect to finding a location suitable. And so in this application, we believe that we've satisfied all of those criteria. The site is suitable for the business intended, which is a gas station convenience store on Major State Road, directly adjacent to the interstate highway. The items that the statutes and the state is generally interested in, that would be, if you think back to when gas stations were initially developed, they were a much more sort of noxious and disruptive use on adjacent neighbors, and items of concern, schools, churches, theaters, were articulated in the statute as possible considerations. None of those are in the nearby vicinity. I think the closest church is the Presbyterian Church further down toward the center of town on Boston Post Road. And obviously, everybody's familiar, Boston Post Road is a major state thoroughfare, Route 1. It's approximately 50 feet wide in this vicinity just before it widens to accommodate the entrance ramp to the highway. Obviously, we've included, because it's a location approval, the traffic study that was prepared as part of the planning and zoning application, and it shows that the road has not only suitable capacity, but already has significant traffic volumes and is designed to handle those. There's not going to be any adverse effect on public travel. The existing fast food use is frankly a very similar use with respect to travel and often being a pass-by trip for a gas station. And then most importantly, given its location in the service business zone, that zone is particularly focused on the community needs and convenience of Darien or other residents. And I think those are the same type of criteria that the Planning and Zoning Commission will be looking at in their in reviewing the special permit and site plan. So that's the sort of general overview. It's a very straightforward, hopefully simple analysis to make the determination that this is a suitable site for a gasoline station. And then with respect to the requested variances, I think of there are technically 4, but I think of them as two related to size, 2 related to location. So with respect to the size, we are asking for an increase in the maximum sign. We are currently allowed a maximum pole sign of 18 square feet and a maximum fuel price sign of 12 square feet. We're requesting a combined 48 square feet, and I'll show you on the next plan exactly what the breakdown of those signs are in particular. And then with respect to the location of both the pole sign and the fuel price sign, those 2 subsections of 935D require that both the sign and the fuel price be located no closer to the street than the gas service island. So if you think about where the pump actually is, that is the where the sign should be located. And what we're requesting is 5 feet there. As I alluded to in response to the chairman's question, I think the hardship on this property is frankly unique to this, as it's required to be unique to this property. We have the constraint of not only Interstate 95 along the boundary, the shape of the lot, given that highway non-access line and the taking line really limit our ability to utilize the site because we're dictated by the limited area in which we can put in a curb cut and access the property and then have suitable locations, suitable movement space on the property. And so I think those two, plus the complication then also of the wetlands and watercourse that are adjacent to the property. So with respect to the overall site, this is just the signage plan. The P right there along the front of the property. Hold on, I'm just trying to get the mouse. Right here is where the pylon sign is located. Those other locations are just the existing building signage that is, or proposed building signage that's within the jurisdiction of the ARB and Planning and Zoning Commission. So with that, this is the proposed sign for which we're seeking a variance. The 7-Eleven, we showed right here, the 7-Eleven as 23 square feet. That's in fact this 7-Eleven sign itself is what we're proposing to be 23 square feet. The 25 square feet is actually comprised of a smaller sign of approximately 8 square feet, which is the Raise the Roost, which is the proposed food operator in the facility. As you probably know from your own experience, and what's reflected in our zoning regulation update is that modern gas stations often include convenience store and a food service use. And so that Raise the Roost sign with the chicken is in fact the sign for that, that component of the facility. That's approximately 8 square feet. And then the fuel price sign itself, the area below, is 17 square feet. So if you were to look at just the fuel price sign of 17 square feet, we're allowed 12 square feet for that sign. And we are allowed 18 square feet for the combined 7-Eleven and Roost sign. And what we're asking for is 30. And I think when you look at the proposed renderings and the site, we are maintaining, as you can see on the site plan, we are maintaining this existing driveway as the curb cut to the property. So what we are proposing is that location for the sign, the property line, and I'm happy to go back to the site plan for you if you'd like to see. So we're requesting 5 feet from the request is 5 feet from the property line. The actual distance between where the sign would be and the curb line is actually closer to about 11 square feet. Excuse me, 11 feet from here to the Boston Post Road. And then because the curb line is changing a bit in the proposed condition, it's about 10 feet this way to our proposed. And so this is obviously heading north on the Post Road with the facility on your right. And then this is the rendering of the sign with the facility obviously on your left as you're coming up. I think the important thing to see in this from this vantage point is that we do have this office building that has just done a number of improvements here. This includes a significant landscaping buffer that they have added here. So when we looked at whether there was a compliant location to put the sign, there really isn't, especially when the proposed building is going to be located here and the layout of the site. So let me I just want to go back to the site plan for 1 second to show you one other item. And then here, so the 30, excuse me, so right here, the dimension that's shown is the 30. This is approximately 45 feet from the property line to the edge of the canopy. So this would be the location, this dimension right here is where we would need to put a sign that would be in a compliant location. As you can see, anywhere there that we could put the sign is either one in an upland review area for the wetlands that are on site. Number two, if we were to try and locate it over here, we're behind the building for the actual store, and you have no visibility here because you'd be blocked by the building. And then in this area is the landscaping on the adjacent property that would also block the sign. And then the other item that I think is important for the commission to note, in this section of the Boston Post Road, we are required to have an 18-foot landscape setback as well. So we are, this whole area, while not, doesn't have that extensive of a, there's actually parking right here in this area. So this whole area will be much more landscaped and complete. So that's the proposed location. I think the, as I said, the hardship with respect to this is we cannot, given this property line, there really isn't much location for us to be able to put that in any kind of location that it still has, visibility. And certainly, even if we tried to move it back, this is obviously area that's necessary for access to the pumps, access for not only trucks, but also fire and other, any kind of emergency equipment. And then I think the one thing that was mentioned, I understand that a commission member raised a question about the other gas stations in the vicinity and their proposed signage. I think the one that is most directly adjacent to us is the mobile station on 211, which is on the opposite side of Boston Post Road, just down. I think it's 2 properties. It's almost directly adjacent to the entrance at I-95. And as you'll see from the materials that were provided to you, there was a variance of 11 feet given for the installation of that mobile sign. Practically speaking, as I said earlier, that is about the same distance that we would be, that would sort of be the practical effect, because that property line comes out to the street, having lost, we lost that distance because of the taking line. Practically speaking, the feel of the variance and where that sign will be is very similar to what that mobile station was given based on, frankly, speeds and other considerations that are reflected in those minutes. So with that, that's I'm sorry.
If I can interject here just for a moment, thank you very much. And I'm sensing you're almost done, so I apologize. But
this
is a matter of good. Thank you very much. Just as a matter of reference, you're requesting a pole sign there at your site, and the sign that you're referencing and comparing to is a monument sign. Mm-hmm. Those fall under 2 different definitions, just so we're clear on that.
Correct. That those are different, obviously different type signs, but the I think the concept that the variance and the location on the Boston Post Road and needing that kind of closer proximity than, frankly, in this case, 45 feet back from the street, apply, frankly, in both situations.
Question. How do you plan to illuminate this sign?
It is contained in the signage package. The illumination is there. It's internally illuminated. It's a white LED internally illuminated cabinet.
Woody, do they need a variance for that, since we don't allow internally illuminated signs?
You actually do under your new regulations.
Oh, we do? Okay.
Yep.
You're way ahead of me then. I believe so.
That was one of the updates that we did have, especially particularly in the, there's a set of signage, illumination that are specific to the pedestrian-oriented districts, but given that this is a automobile-oriented district, subsection 936F allows internal illumination.
Oh, you're way ahead of me. It's very good. And what about letter size? How big are the letters?
The letters themselves are, actually have it. They're the details of the letter for the wall sign are just about the same as the pole sign, and those, so the various portions of the 7-Eleven are, hold on if I can go back to sharing my screen. So this portion of the top of the 11 is approximately 15 inches. The word 11, the bulk of the word 11 is approximately 10 inches, with the L being a little taller. And then the bottom is approximately 16 inches. And generally, the regulation now allows 26 inches for the height of letters, logos, symbols on a sign in an automobile-oriented district, but we can exceed that with a positive recommendation from the ARB, which is why they were interested in what your outcome was about the variance before we got into a substantive discussion of the design of the sign.
Okay. And did I see it? I'm trying to read this thing. How high is this? Is it 15 feet?
15 feet.
Wow. Okay.
Which is what is allowed by the current regulations.
For a pole sign, right?
Correct.
And we're calling this a pole sign, not a monument sign?
Right. The request is the pole sign, and under, I think it's 935D3B, it's actually the same section of which we're requiring the variance for the location, is the one that allows 15 feet.
Okay. Thank you.
With going back to Jeff Williams, with going back to the monument sign versus the pole sign, I'd be more interested in a comparison to the Sunoco sign just to the west of the mobile sign. As you know, we already have 3 gas stations within a quarter-mile radius of Dutchess. Mm-hmm. You've got a BP, you've got a mobile, and you've got a Sunoco. To focus on the Sunoco for a minute, and then I'll ask you if you would be happy with the monument sign. But before I get there, the Sunoco sign, as you know, or as you may know, is lined up pursuant to the regulations with the pumping island. Yours is not. So number one, can you address that? And number two, if you would be accepting of a monument sign as opposed to a pole sign.
So number one, with respect to the Sunoco sign, that's the property at 93 Boston Post Road. And okay. The sort of difference that I see with 93 Boston Post Road is that they're actually also licensed as a car repairer by the state of Connecticut. They're not simply a gas station. So I would distinguish them because their primary business is really car repair, and they offer gas. Their license is both, but I think the location there, and frankly, I think the other difference there is that, as you can see, the canopy, and I'm just looking at the photo that was that Mr. Woodside had submitted into the record for your review. The canopy itself comes out much closer to the street than the current sign. So under the current regulations, that sign could actually move closer to Boston Post Road because it just needs to be consistent with the canopy or the service island rather than its current location. So I actually think that they could, in fact, if they wanted to, under the new regulations, move that to provide better visibility.
You may be correct there, but the issue is that they have not.
And frankly, based on the signs, my understanding of sort of when signage changes in the industry is that typically, and if you think about turnover of gas stations, oftentimes the branding will change as their branding agreements are updated, which is typically about 10 years. So given that the regulations were only amended 2 years ago, it would not surprise me to see that if that was going to be updated as part of another agreement, that's often done by, I think you've probably seen applications where they're brought by the actual oil company, Alliance Energy, or some of those other, the actual gas distributor rather than the property owner, because that is ultimately part of their branding agreement that they will update signs, and it's done at not the operator's expense, but rather the sort of corporate entity, the Shell, the Sunocos, the Amicos, et cetera, of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So can I interject just two questions I have? Woody, has this traffic study been peer reviewed?
I don't know. I believe the Planning and Zoning Commission will do that, though.
Yes. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but yes, we actually have had a peer review by Mike Galante, who's the company name changed, but I think he's been your longtime peer reviewer, at least as long as I can remember. We got comments last week. We're actually working on an exchange of data between Jason Adams, who's on the call, and Mr. Galante's office. We've also had preliminary conversations with the DOT because of the proximity of the highway and the access onto Boston Post Road. DOT's policy is that they will not act on anything or give anything other than very, high level, great, thanks for coming in type comments until all local approvals are granted. So we're proceeding on that path, and I think if you have specific questions about the peer review, Jason's on the phone and can provide those any specific answers, but it's underway.
Well, yeah, I'd like to see the peer review report because, and not to offend Jason, but I've traveled that section of road quite frequently. And in your plan, you propose a left turn out of that curb cut, and taking a left turn out of that curb cut is the equivalent of trying to thread the gut in Woods Hole, which is a very treacherous set of water, and you're going across one lane into 2 lanes of traffic, and it's a really scary proposal to me to see that's what's here. Just down the road, when we had an application from Trader Joe's, we stipulated to only right turn traffic out of that parking lot because of the same issue. And then to the northeast of this, you've got the exit ramp from 95, which is precarious at best. It's 2 lanes that have enough room for 1 car once you get across the first set of lanes, and you'll routinely have cars stacked up into the traveled way when you get across that. And then they're trying to take a left turn into 1 lane that goes straight and continues down the post road, and 1 lane that goes left onto the highway. So that whole area, to say that this won't have any impact on that is quite shocking to me.
So just by way of technical, and then if there are, we can certainly get you a copy of the peer review right now, as I recall, is an exchange of data at this point, the traffic counts and that kind of thing, but I'll let Jason explain. The one thing we are doing that you can see on the site plan, I'm happy to pull it up if you'd like, is that we are proposing, so the existing site has, actually, maybe if I go back to the photo at the moment, it has a right in and then one shared right and left out. What we are proposing is to address that by having separate one entrance and then a right and a left out. So that's designed to mitigate the effects of people turning left and making sure that there's still space for movements and that sort of thing. If you have a specific question on the peer review, I'm happy to turn it over to Jason.
I haven't seen it, so I can't.
Okay, so yeah, we can get that for you.
Yeah, no, I mean, my comment about the left turn out of there isn't in regards to the width of the curb cut. It's in regards to the travel way that you've got to get across.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, I don't think by adding a bigger curb cut, you're solving the issue that exists there. You actually might be making it worse.
Jason, do you want to address that?
Sure, I can speak to that. For the record, I'm Jason Adams with McMahon Associates, and we prepared the traffic impact study for the project. I guess what I'll say is that as we begin to try to understand the potential impacts of the project, we look at volumes and we also look at safety. So we completed a review of the available crash data to understand if there are any existing safety deficiencies. As has been noted, the use is fairly similar to the fast food use that is there today. Similar access and similar distribution of vehicle trips and the like. Over the most recent 3 years, there were only 3 crashes that occurred that were reported at this location. So what that indicates to us is that there is not a significant safety deficiency today, and therefore, as our project would be expected to increase volumes over what is there today, but not in a significant way. We feel that it would continue to operate in a safe manner. And as to your point of the left turns, certainly there's going to be difficulty taking the left out of here. And I think that the nature of this use being a convenience use is that what you'll see is during the busiest times of day, people wouldn't choose to turn left out of that site. They're going to be drawn back towards 95 and the highway. But over the course of a typical day during off-peak times, middle of the day, late morning, later at night, that left turn is really important for providing the best access possible, as there is no other way to turn left from this location.
Okay, I guess I'll just wait to see the peer review. And then the other question, Woody, for you was, has town council opined on our role in this matter?
Yes, they did. And they concluded that, yes, the statute does put the authority on the location and its approval to the ZBA.
Did we get any guidance on how we're supposed to act in that situation, or what our decision tree looks like?
Good question, but no, not really. And as Ms. Fushins pointed out, it's been so long since another facility even located here that we don't have much to offer you in terms of how to do that. But she did point out, I think, some of the criteria and I forgot where that list was from. So I think there is something that you can look at carefully, but maybe consider the neighborhood and the other features of the other stations nearby. And I don't have much to offer you other than that it's supposed to be our responsibility. The P&Z Commission will also look at some aspects of the location, including the site details. So if they're not home free, ZBA approval of the location.
Woody, where was that? I didn't see anything in my packet from town council. Did I miss something?
I don't know.
Yeah, we have it, Mike. I don't know, it's in one of my piles somewhere, but I did read it. and he does place the authority and under our purview of that issue with our board.
It might have been a separate message that we just got late last week or early this, I forget when.
So was it an email or something? I'm surprised. I'm pretty good about
No, it's a paper document. It had some yellow outlining on it at the end where in his conclusion paragraph. Geez, I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it, but he had a conclusion paragraph at the end of the 3-page document highlighted in yellow, basically saying it was our decision. Not basically. Let me rephrase.
Was it
basically said that I'm sorry, Mike. I don't recall where I had it or where I saw it. I'm looking for it now.
Isn't it in the packet you guys dropped off yesterday? Because I saw it too. It's on hard paper. It's not a digital copy. So I think we got it in that yesterday.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know where the heck it is. You know, having my kitchen as an office isn't the easiest thing in the world.
Well, what I would suggest is, if the applicant is okay, I'd like to continue the hearing to see the peer review of the traffic study, and someone can get me a copy of that memo from town council. That would be helpful. I don't have it in my materials. And I'd like to get Woody some guidance from town council. Not that I don't trust Amy on this, but I just want to make sure that we're applying the right legal standard and, you know, analyzing this the right way.
Just for the record, I understand, and I think the challenge that he has is the same one that I have, which is there used to be until 2003 a statute that said, you know, criteria for suitability, and it was without going into the gory details, there were competing public acts in 2003 and a question as to specifically with the parallel repair statute, whether or not it was in fact repealed or not repealed. It's actually that appellate court case that I cited to you involving the repair statute, which has the virtually identical language, is at the Supreme Court right now. And in the meantime, everybody is, you know, in the situations where I've dealt with gas stations over the last, you know, particularly 5 to 6 years, most ZBAs and occasionally the P&Zs in the repair context still generally use the suitability criteria because because you're acting as a state agent rather than a zoning agent. The state has never given any other replacement guidance, whether from Consumer Protection or Department of Motor Vehicles. So I think those of us who have been tasked with that have generally guided the commissions that they're either appearing in front of or advising that the suitability criteria and then, you know, looking at the zoning criteria, you know, is the use allowed in the zone? How is it allowed in the zone? Have generally been what the agencies have looked at.
Okay, I'm inclined to agree with the chair that we should continue this hearing, but before we move in that direction, Woody, would you go on mute, please? Sure. Mute, please, Woody. Thank you. Thank you. That makes a huge difference. But 2 things before we move in that direction, if I may. One is I don't recall you responding to my question about would you be accepting a monument sign? That's number 1. Number 2, you referenced the buildings, the office buildings next door to you and the buffer, the landscaping, the buffer that has been recently created. But I'm sorry, I didn't see the relevance with regard to that comment. What difference does it make about the office buildings and the buffer? I'm sorry, can you elaborate on that for me, please?
Sure, it was just as another, do I think it's a technical item for the variance standard? No. Do I think it's relevant to, you know, if we're looking at the various locations that we could try to install this sign in a compliant location, there really isn't one, and that's magnified by the fact that the adjacent office building has just planted fairly significant landscaping basically along the property line at the back of where this building would be.
I understand. So are you suggesting, I'm just trying to be clear here, are you suggesting that one of your options for a sign location has been obfuscated because of this buffer? This buffer is interfering with the placement of your sign? Is that what you're trying to say?
No, I'm saying that there isn't a location for it that's in a compliant location, because it would be a compliant location would need to be basically back here behind our existing building, or excuse me, behind the proposed building. And
Amy, you're not sharing your screen anymore.
oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Let me go back. Sorry about that. So the line that we'd have to sort of abide by for a compliant location is here. This is the front, the line that where the gas island canopy would be is here. So theoretically, the closest compliant location that we could put a sign on this portion of the property is frankly just on the property line. And then here is all of that landscaping. So
right. So that is what you're saying. Okay. All right. So that is what you're saying.
I'm saying that we can't put it here because we have this odd shape and it's not visible. You wouldn't see, you wouldn't be able to put a sign here because the building is here.
Okay.
And then that's exacerbated by the fact that there is now extensive landscaping that's been planted all in this area.
I understand what you're saying. Thank you.
Okay.
And again, I'm sorry, but I just don't recall you responding to my monument question.
I think I'd need to speak with my client about it. It was
understood.
So especially if we're continuing the meeting, that's certainly something that we can talk about and we can evaluate. I know it had been there had been a number of signage options that were discussed while we were having the discussion with staff, but I still think we require a variance because the location needs to be, we need a variance of the location to put it here and to still have it closer to, closer than the pump to the street. So in any event, even if we switched it to a monument sign, we still need at least some variances.
I understand. Okay. Thank you very much.
Sure.
Amy, one other thing, since we are looking to continue this, when you go through that exercise on monument sign, can you look at other alternatives? In particular, it seems to me that there's some, and maybe there's an engineering reason, maybe there's a site deficiency reason, but it seems to me that you could sort of turn these buildings, you know, what is that, 90 degrees, and put the pumps in front and the restaurant in back, like you see a lot of gas stations, and you'd be much closer to the road for your signage and still be compliant.
Right. We'll look at that. I think my initial thought is that I don't know whether that geometry works for fuel deliveries, and more importantly, we just got comments from the fire marshal. We had to confirm that the fire apparatus could make the appropriate movements. So that would be the other thing we'll look at.
Yep. I don't want to get to another hearing and then say, oh, by the way, did you?
I very much appreciate that.
I think that's really all I had questions on. I'll go through. Vic, did you have any questions?
Nope, all set.
Okay, Barb? Jeff?
No.
Dan?
No.
Woody, did you have any other questions? Okay, I got your no. Amy, do you have anything else you want to present tonight?
No, I think we will, what I have as my list is to get you the peer review comments. If your next meeting is the 14th, we may have some additional responses, so we'll make sure we get you whatever we have before the next meeting. I would like to see, I actually didn't see what the town attorney provided, but I'll get that. Question about the monument sign, and then whether there's any option about rotating the buildings. So other than that, I think we presented everything we needed to send to you affirmatively.
Excellent. Is there anyone from the audience that wishes to be heard from this on this application this evening?
Yes, my name is Nick Fletcher. I'd like to just make a brief comment, if I may.
Sure.
So I'm actually the owner of the property at 320 and 330 Post Road, right next door to the current Duchess and this proposed site. Quite candidly, I do have some concerns. I'm not going to share them all here because I know that this is, I think, much more focused around signage. But there's a couple points that I do want to just highlight, and I think one of the recent comments around the orientation and the site, ultimately the site plan of this proposed development is of some concern. As you guys may know, we purchased this property about 2 years ago, actually a little bit over, and which was, a nearly vacant property. We've invested a substantial amount of money into this asset, and the neighborhood, I think, is starting to really change for the better. And so I think a property like Duchess, or a site like Duchess, has somewhat of a responsibility to continue to improve and to ultimately preserve the character and enhance the character of this part of town. So, I think the orientation of listen, I'm leasing up a building to Class A office tenants, all of whom have, office space on the first and second floor of the building, many of which will have sight line into this property. And I am concerned about what they're going to be looking out into. Everything, whether it's from signage to the type of mechanical equipment, to the top of and to me, I think there's more that needs to be considered here, not only with the site plan, but even with the idea as a whole. And I don't mean to buck the system at all, but I value where Darien is and what we're doing, and I'm just not sure the fit feels right. And that may not be relevant here in this discussion, but I thought I would comment on that. In addition, I think my last point would be around the intensity of travel in and out of this location. I would argue that a convenience store and a gas station is going to see an increase in volume and use compared to what the current state is. And I think the board needs to consider that, seriously, especially given the recent addition of a sidewalk or a crosswalk for pedestrians, as well as sort of the nuance of this intersection, if you will, because it certainly is. It's not typical, and so those are the points I'd like to make. I appreciate everybody considering our input.
Yeah. So our purview on this is really fairly limited in scope. We're really talking about a sign variance, and then I've got to figure out what the standard is for review for location. But in your concerns about traffic are concerns I share. I grew up in this town. I know that area very well, and it's a pretty dangerous intersection, despite what the statistics show. I think, you know, because the road is so wide, people end up swerving out of the way and avoiding accidents there. But it's a pretty treacherous stretch of road. So I do want to see the peer review. I think it's an important aspect to this, and it's important to us making our decision. I also appreciate the work you did on those buildings. My office was right around the corner, and they look great. So thank you for that.
Appreciate it.
With that, we're going to continue this till when, Woody?
Sorry, October 14th. Yes.
October 14th. And in that time, Woody, I'd like maybe Mr. Fletcher, if he hasn't left, he could coordinate, Amy, with your clients to address any of his concerns as relates to the signage. We're you understand the limited scope that we're looking at here. So
I do, and to the extent that you know, some of the you know, the location approval criteria, you know, talk about existing. Included in your package is our landscape plan. I didn't specifically go into it tonight, but you do have the site plans that Bola prepared, and there is both the landscaping plan, the lighting plan are in there, and certainly will be the subject of a much more extensive review and presentation at next week's planning and zoning meeting. So, and certainly part of their, you know, their broader scope in the special permit and site plan context.
Okay, good. Thank you all for a good evening, and we'll go ahead and continue that hearing.
Mike, hang on, Mike, time out. Is there anyone else in the public that wants to be heard other than Mr. Fletcher?
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. And you're good.
Okay, so we continue that. Thank you very much for your time this evening. Can we just take like 10 seconds? I just want to get some water. Is that okay?
I would prefer 3 minutes if that's okay.
Okay.
How about 2? I'll settle on 2.
Channel 79, we're just going to take a quick break and then we'll get into deliberations.
Thank you, everyone.
Get some coffee.
Hey, Woody, can you mute? Because for some reason you get a lot of feedback coming through you. Thanks.
All right, as soon as Jeff, oh, there he is. So as soon as Jeff's back, we'll go right into deliberations on Fuller. And I think we'll do, we'll go down the line. So I'm going to go Jeff now, Vic, Barb, Dan for questions. And then Woody, I'll save you for the end and we'll try and piece something together on this. I honestly, you know, I don't have an issue with the application. I think they demonstrated some reduction in nonconformities. I think they're doing the right thing. I think you know, it's impractical to make them raise the whole house for a relatively small addition. Most of the work they're doing is as of right work. So, you know, I think if we break it down into three pieces, and correct me if I get this wrong, but I think we're talking about the changes to the sunroom, the variance for the floor height on the patio area, and the raising of the AC units. And I honestly didn't have an issue with any of the three of those. So I'll leave it to you guys to tell me where you're coming out on this.
Isn't there another variance they're requesting? Is the front foyer powder room kind of thing? They wanted to actually raise that up too.
I thought that was part of the same height variance, wasn't it?
I thought they were including the woody, they're requiring 5 variances.
Let me take a look again.
Foyer, powder room, staircase, raised equipment platform, sunroom, second floor balcony walkway.
Where are you reading all that?
On his questions, staff questions, point number 2. Is that from July, I guess?
This has, so their variance request has 3. Portion of the sunroom on the other side of the house to remain in the VE zone.
Woody, clarify.
There we go. Yes, there are 5 separate variant items. And maybe you can look at the legal notice or the agenda, and they're kind of listed in there with all the numbers that are involved.
So there are 5.
They need a variance to make something more conforming. How's that possible?
If it's in the setback space, yeah. Talking about the AC platform?
No, I'm talking about the roof of the sunroom.
They're actually changing the volume of that sunroom. Whether you accept that it's however many cubic foot reduction in total, the fact is they are reconstructing that structure in the setback space.
All right, so on the legal notice, here are the variances that are being asked for. 13 feet instead of 16 feet minimum required floor elevation for the foyer powder room.
Right.
9.8 feet in lieu of 16 feet minimum required floor elevation for the lower staircase. 12 feet in lieu of 25 feet minimum required side yard setback for raised equipment platform. 12 feet in lieu of 40 feet required rear setback for the reconstructed sunroom. 31 feet in lieu of 40 feet minimum required rear yard setback for the balcony and walkway. And that's it.
Correct.
Okay, so those are the variances that they're requesting. To me, they break down into 3, but okay.
What was the last one you said, Mike? You said setback where?
That is the same setback for the walkway to the sunroom.
Walkway. Yeah, I agree. I think that's the same as, yeah, I agree. Okay.
Jeff, it's your floor.
Well, firstly, I didn't mean and have any intent in hurting Mr. Fuller's feelings. That's for sure. Secondly, I'm really okay with the application. I'm really okay, essentially speaking. So I'll leave it at that.
Vic?
I'm okay with it too. I thought they did a pretty good job of highlighting what they're going to make better and what FEMA compliance stuff they're going to do. I have no problem with this. I was a little bit sticky about the sunroom, but I could get there. I think that's okay too. So
Okay.
I'm okay with all of them.
Barb?
I'm okay with everything that they're asking for.
I'm okay with everything as well. I think the sunroom was the only thing I was debating. You could make them lop off the sunroom, but I think they've demonstrated 8 different compromises where they have scaled back. I think they made the house safer, more functional, with, I think, minimum adjustment. I don't see anything dramatic going on here. You know, Vic, you always are such a stickler about volume in the space, volume in the space. I don't see any increase in volume in the space other than the walkway on that sun deck. I just think it's smart. I do think they did a good job. I struggle too because, you know, the main variance is the flood zone. And I think we've got to fall back on, it makes the house safer, it makes it more efficient, it modernizes it. I don't know that it's not a hardship, but we have granted that stuff before. Eaves over front walkways for safety issues, things like that.
Yeah, no, we're absolutely allowed to take safety issues into concern. And I think that's a good point that they raised late in the presentation, which changed my mind about it. I mean, I was pretty anti this application when I reviewed it, and when I looked at it, I didn't think it was really provable. But, you know, when you start to talk about the things you're doing to improve the site, you know, the force wall, the linear footage of force wall he's taking away so that there's easier drainage on the site. You know, I think all of those, in connection with the fact that it is a unique property in a unique location, you've got the change in the zoning regulations, which isn't enough by itself, but it's an important factor. Excuse me, the flood regulations. So I was compelled by the application. Dan, did you have anything further?
Yeah, I was struggling in the beginning between the convenience and hardship, but I think if you look at the sum of all the changes that they are making, at the end of the day, they are making the house more conforming. They are also making it more flood proof, you know, by putting in those flood vents and moving equipment at a higher level. I think overall, yeah, I think it, you know, I'm okay with it.
Okay, so I'm going to make a motion to approve. Woody, we're going to have, oh, sorry, Woody, I didn't give you your time to shine. Do you have anything to add?
Well, it's just the list of possible stipulations.
I was just going to go through them.
Probably worth going through those, but
Yep.
like the flood advisory and so forth.
Yeah, so that's number 2 of the staff questions. Prior to the condition, zoning shall verify full extent. I think A, absolutely. We had the discussion about the cost. They said that they were going to comply with it. I think that's 100%. B, is that in keeping with their application, or is this a further requirement? Woody, you're muted. Woody.
That would be an increase in the floor level, yes. They proposed 13. To take it to 14, at least I would comply with the flood zone in that exact spot. The 16 applies because of the sunroom and the velocity zone.
Okay, I think we should give them the 13. I think that house is chopped up enough as it is. C, advise the house structure is located below the house or vulnerable possible flood. Yeah, I think that we should make that risk. I think they're well aware of it, but I think we should put it in our stipulation that there is a risk of flood damage. They should look at flood insurance and not hold us responsible for any investment that they make in an area that is not, you know, within flood zone and or up to FEMA regulations or town regulations. The platform shall be screened, sound deadening materials. I don't know about sound deadening materials, but certainly some appropriate screening to be approved by staff. You know, it's going to be pretty high up over there, so shall not have exterior lights. So that's your E, Woody, is a bit of a tricky one. Because if we say they can't have any lights out there and then someone falls off the damn balcony, they're going to come back and sue us because we didn't have lights. So I think maybe just appropriate lighting to, you know, for safety.
Yeah, well, the intent of that was just to protect off-site properties, not the on-site circumstances.
Yeah,
So-
I think that's fine. So we could do some of that language we do about no glare onto neighboring property type stipulation. DEP, DEP, do they have to go in front of anyways?
No, they don't. Just the Planning and Zoning Commission.
I think I'm okay with them not having to do any more with DEP. They're going to have to do septic and all that stuff anyway. So I think that's all I have for stipulations. Does anyone else have anything that they want to add to that? Okay. I will make a motion to approve with those stipulations. All in favor?
Can we get a second from someone?
Oh, sorry.
I'll take care of that. I'll second that.
It's so long since I've been here.
Okay.
Listen, I'm
All
seconding
right.
the motion that I offended somebody.
Barkley.
I'm good.
Well, that was 5-0, I presume.
5-0. Barkley,
Yeah.
I have absolutely no issue with Barkley. If anyone has an issue with it, please chime in now.
Oh,
I think the hardship is, we said it in the hearing, it was the topography of the property, it's the right of way, the closeness to the right of way that creates a 20 front yard setback. They're going no higher than any other portion of the property. We, you know, as an admonishment, we generally don't grant height variances, but I don't feel like this is actually a true height variance. I think that there's something really strange with the topography of this property that's throwing them out of conformity. And so for that reason, I make a motion to approve with no stipulations except for any standard stipulations that Woody puts in about construction timing and all that other sort of stuff. Do I have a
Second.
second?
Second.
Vic, seconds, all in favor? Unanimous, Woody. Look at how good we're doing tonight. All right, Daniel. What was Daniel? Oh, this is the guy with the oil tank. I mean, hardship is the unique nature of the lot. It's the fact that there's wetlands on the other side. I don't want this guy trenching through the wetlands and potentially spilling oil into, I think that's Stony Brook that's there. And, you know, whatever. Okay. I had some other choice comments, but I won't go into them. So I like the location. I think it's already well screened. I think that we should put in screening language to remain. So existing screening to remain. That's all I got.
I just found it a bit strange that he's actually, I think he's moving actually closer to his well than the tank that was buried. So I don't know.
He's moving it further away, but but more importantly, he's putting it above ground.
He's putting it above ground, absolutely.
Yeah,
But I
I
thought
think that's really the big fix there, because if it's in ground, you know, and it starts leaking, it's gonna go right into his well.
Yeah. If it's above ground and it starts leaking, who knows?
We don't care about stipulating any kind of soil testing or anything, right? We don't get involved in that. That's a private matter.
No, they can deal with that. And if he's got a contaminated well, he might want to deal with that as well. You could direct him to Department of Public Works in Stanford will do testing for free, or $10 or something.
Really?
We get our well tested every year, man. That stuff, you're drinking that all day long. So with those stipulations, Woody, I will make a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Barb seconds. All in favor? Good job. Okay. Woody, you had a couple things on other business. Is there anything that's pressing?
It's got to be pressing, Woody. 3 hours and 20 minutes, sir.
You're still on mute.
Woody.
Did it again. Well, we do have another meeting next week. Chuck will be with us. And he joined early on tonight. He did have some concerns and comments about the policies and a couple other things. But we could certainly pick up the July minutes. We could pick up the other thing on Prospect Avenue. So we're good if you want to break now.
Okay, let's do that. It was that first application I made much longer than I needed to. I apologize, guys. I will make a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second?
Second.
Vic, second. All in favor? Aye. Okay.
Aye.
We are officially adjourned.